Right, so I've got this point and click game I want to play, but it doesn't run in ScumVM nor DOSBox. In fact, it doesn't run under Windows, Mac or Linux at all. Turns out I need a very specialised piece of hardware, and that hardware would be this. Or this is a possibility too, but the sound reproduction is weird. Or you could just totally emulate it and end up with better looking footage, which is exactly what I'm going to do.
I had some good times with the humble Sega Genesis, as it's called in North America, and known as the Mega Drive literally everywhere else. Once upon a time, the words console-exclusive point-and-click adventure might have filled my soul with terror and my bowels with exactly what you'd expect. After playing something like Blazing Dragons, I lost my fear because that game made it work. You're always going to be hampered by having a D-pad, of course, but you can look at this two ways. Assume the interface will be rubbish, or see it as an opportunity to find a clever way around the problem. Have a little faith, basically.
So I'll be optimistic and give them a chance. Let's see how they handle Scooby-Doo Mystery, a licensed game. Oh, crap. Oh well, at least it's not based on the live-action films.
This is only one of a handful of Mega Drive point-and-clicks you can buy. Hell, I'm surprised there's even as many as that. The SNES got a version 2. It veers towards a side-scrolling platform point-and-click hybrid along the lines of Beavis and Butthead for the Mega Drive, which is weird because the SNES version of that game also veers towards traditional side-scrolling instead, and none of this is even in the same postcode as On Topic. Let's move on. The game came to us courtesy of Acclaim, back when they were halfway competent, with the help of Sunsoft. Really? And whoever the hell Illusion Software are. The 16-bit Scooby-Doo theme would be fine were it not for this ear-piercing note they keep playing. Even worse, it reminds me of IkiFoo, a game that used that note all the time. The rest of the game shies away from using it, thankfully. Turns out you've got two mysteries to solve here: Blake's Hotel and Haha Carnival. In either case, you control Shaggy and Scooby, who, let's face it, are everyone's favourite characters. Each scenario opens with the mystery van en route to certain nonsense, with the gang discussing what they're going to do at their destination. Spoilers, Shaggy and Scooby want to eat. I do love Fred's face here though. It's like he's suddenly realised that he's going to spend the rest of his life in a van with these dickheads and he's just letting the despair wash over him. He hides it well though. In the Blake's Hotel scenario, the gang are invited to stay at a hotel owned by Daphne's Uncle Blake, except he's the only person around by the time they arrive, apart from the gardener and the cook. See, the ghost of a Native American chief has scared everybody else away, and Uncle Blake himself disappears about a minute into the story. The rest of the gang disappear to do something completely unimportant, obviously, leaving Shaggy and Scooby to wander around the hotel and save the goddamn day as usual. In the Haha Carnival scenario, the gang take a trip to a carnival what is named the Haha Carnival. It's closed. Jeez, no luck these guys. And the manager has been taken hostage by an evil clown. Given my gaming experiences, I'm not convinced there's any other type of clown. Aside from those two glimpses at the incredibly obvious villain, there's no indication that anything's wrong until you spot the gang adrift in the lake or find the manager's note about him being kidnapped. You could wander around the carnival all day long without realising. So the plots are nothing to write home about, but I figure it's indistinguishable from just about any episode of the show. Makes sense, given there's essentially 2 episodes on the cartridge. Make them short, simple Scooby-Doo stories. What else would a fan want? And that's about the most sensible thing I'd come across at this point. From here, it gets weird. Booting this up for the first time didn't exactly make me hopeful, given the console-only and licensed game factors. In fact, what it mostly gave me was questions. Why are there 2 separate stories instead of a single longer one? Why include so many verbs when screen space would be so limited? Why doesn't Scooby do a goddamn thing but follow you around? Why did the rest of the gang never bloody help? Could there be a more generic title for a Scooby-Doo game? Why does Shaggy comment on this trapdoor every single time I go through it? Why does the solution to one puzzle involve putting metal in a microwave? How do you work?
Fair enough.
Right, I better explain how this plays given all the evangelising I did in the intro. To start with, you use the D-pad to walk around. You press left, man go left. Like you'd expect for a console game, or indeed any of the old Sierra AGI games. Okay, that's arguably better than having to move the mouse cursor over each time. Cool. Pressing A gives you the cursor, which moves around as you'd expect in pointy-click land, and you press B to inverted commas click on things. Move that cursor down to the verbs and it switches to a grid style selection for your pleasure. And pressing the C button swaps between verbs and your inventory. Honestly, this works better than I hoped. They give you the character movement you're familiar with, they let you pick verbs verbs easily, and despite the list being larger than strictly necessary, swapping between showing verbs and showing your inventory works quickly and smoothly. It does take a little bit of getting used to though. The first time I tried to use an inventory item, I was flailing around like a walrus playing bongos, but I got into the groove of it, so to speak. Verb C item done, verb C item done. It's like a rhythm, like playing bongos. Walrus. But there's no getting around the fact that moving the cursor with a D-pad is annoyingly slow. You can cheat a little bit and use the verb inventory grid to move faster horizontally. I don't want to say there's not much to the story, but it's a Scooby-Doo episode, plain and simple. Go place, find mystery, solve mystery, sandwiches. Not much to talk about there. You either like that sort of thing or you don't, including the fact that the rest of the gang bugger off at the start. In fact, they'll even come back around the halfway mark only to bugger right off again. If you're not interested in Scooby-Doo at all, it's competent storytelling. It gives you a goal and a reason for achieving it, not much else. As for the gameplay, well, you're already being slowed down by the controls, and then they start throwing some moon logic puzzles at you. That doesn't help. At least the bumper car minigame suits the controls, that was kind of fun. But in that same episode, there's a few puzzles based on timing, made even worse by having to hit something with your snail-ass cursor. And of course, there's a bloody maze. It's not all great, is what I'm saying. Now, what about that big-ass list of weird things I mentioned about 3 years ago? Maybe including 2 separate stories was their way of replicating the feel of an episode. Short, contained stories where they solve a mystery and flee in the space of 20 minutes. The logical thing, from a development standpoint anyway, would be to make it one big story in the same location. That way they could cut down on all the unique backgrounds. Bear in mind, we're dealing with cartridges here, so there's only so many that are going to fit. It's also possible that this was a quantity over quality situation, but nobody's taking Action 52's big shitty crown anytime soon. The sizable verb list is trickier to justify. Even this was on the way out by 1995. Ironically, the game took the LucasArts style of verbing and the early Sierra style of moving about. Maybe they decided the inventory would have 8 items per screen and just made enough verbs to match. At least they gave the objects default verbs though. You can just click on the object to perform the most obvious action without having to faff around with the verb list. As it turns out, my first impressions of Scooby were wrong. He does help you, just silently. Mostly. He'll wander around the screen pointing things out. Items to pick up, exits to take, things you probably shouldn't try to lick, that sort of thing. He's actually essential for at least one of the puzzles. That would also be the moment where the devs turn the classic Scooby-Doo door chase into an actual puzzle. I expected the gag, sure, just not quite like this. It was a pleasant surprise. That's something I can say for the game. It's cute. Charming even. For example, Shaggy gets electrocuted pretty much every time he touches something electrical. Can't say that doesn't raise a smile. And for what I said about it being, in essence, a pair of Scooby-Doo episodes, the developers threw in the odd touch or reference to subvert that a little bit. Even though they thought adding a maze was a good idea, they skip it on the way back and lampshade it to boot. This isn't exactly relevant to reviewing, but I imagine a lot of fun was had making this. There's a bunch of moments where someone obviously said, "Hey, this would be cool." I really doubt that a Colossal Cave Adventure reference was mandated by the publisher. Of course, it doesn't overturn all the rubbish parts of the game, but it helps. I have to say, I'm glad I gave this a chance, although it may mostly be my curiosity kicking in. This all might be too much for some people to play. Normally I would suggest watching a Let's Play instead, but I don't think it'll do anything for you. What drew me to this game was the fact that it was on a console and I wanted to see how they dealt with those limitations. It was a curiosity that couldn't be satisfied by watching game footage. All you'd get from a Let's Play are 2 episodes of Scooby-Doo done as silent movies.
It's got charm, there's no point in denying that, but there's no reason to hunt this down apart from rampant curiosity or desperately wanting a complete collection of Mega Drive games. Both things that I struggle with daily.